Do
I
it.
played some stuff this week, and I've got one I want to talk about because I was surprised at how good it was for a thing I didn't expect to be that much. Did either of you know there is a free epilogue DLC to God of War Ragnarok that came out this week?
No, I knew about like some didn't they do some roguelite thing?
Yeah, so this is what it is.
Oh, this
Or
is it.
it might have
Okay.
Yeah.
come out. It might have come out a week a little bit ago, but I played it. I played it this week. God of War Ragnarok has a roguelike epilogue DLC called Valhalla.
Hmm.
And as you say, it's a roguelike mode. And I wasn't expecting a lot of that from that, but I was surprised at how much of like an actual proper narrative addition to this game this is.
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, so before getting into the mechanics of it, it took me about 8 hours to see like the main story thread through, but it seems like there is still more plot to be exploring, and the plot that is there genuinely feels like a major addition to that narrative that is a really nice closing point for Kratos. I've seen rumors floating around that like this is the last Kratos God of War, and that we're moving on to his kid in future ones probably. And having played this roguelite mode, yeah, I get the feeling that probably is the case. They're very much sort of setting that up, but this roguelike mode is just narratively, it is a really nice exploration of the old God of War games, the ones prior to Dad of Boy,
Hmm.
the ones where it's like angry God does a lot of killing, occasionally regrets it, goes on to kill some more because he's angry. It's basically an excuse to kind of re-examine some of that stuff through the new version of Kratos and to reconcile how both of those versions of the characters can be, and what you have to sort of what Kratos has to process to be who he is now while also not ignoring who he was. And that is like a really nice thing to explore through going and doing a bunch of roguelike content.
I bet Dave Jaffe's pissed.
Yeah.
I bet David Jaffe's really fucking
Yeah.
pissed. Could you imagine all these years later and how things have changed and how his style of doing things is perhaps no longer desired? And then to have the development team that followed you come along and decide to reassess everything that you've done when you're already a
Yeah.
sensitive little man child, that's really
Yeah.
gotta sting.
It really is. Hey, what if we took a breather and like examined some nuance in Jaffe's work that like no one saw when it was Jaffe making the work?
Wow.
And that's like a genuinely really fascinating way to like end Kratos' narrative. But mechanically, there's a lot of things I quite like about this because like God of War, the reboot and Ragnarok, very satisfying core gameplay loop. But what I like about this roguelike mode is it does a lot to really heavily incentivize changing up what loadout you pick. You know how in something like Hades you have that book in the bedroom that's like, hey, you do this challenge, you get these rewards. This has a system like that, but most of the rewards are centered around pick up every single unique light attack for this weapon during all of your runs. Pick all of these kinds of upgrades. It's trying to encourage you like with very very big amounts of permanent between runs resources to be very varied in what you pick. The other thing I like about how it works, there's a few things that you pick as like your starting build. You pick like a glyph that's going to do certain abilities, you pick a shield, you pick what your Spartan Rage type is going to be. But every run, one of those will be highlighted in a sort of shimmering gold, and it'll be like, you don't have to use it, but if you use this one during this run, we'll give you a bunch of additional rewards during the run to help make the run easier. Again, just sort of encouraging you to not just stick with one thing. I like that every run you have all three of your major weapons that you had at the end of God of War Ragnarok. Getting the core basic weapon isn't something you have to hope for a random chance with. You've got your blades on chains, your axe, your spear. All of the upgrades are sort of on top of that. So at the very least, if you're just like, I just like using the spear and I really don't want to use anything else, for example, you're always going to have that available to you at the start of the run. And it does seem to slightly skew the upgrades it offers you based on the things you're using most. Like, if you are primarily using one weapon type, it does seem to offer you upgrades for that weapon type before it offers you other upgrades, which I like. My biggest issue with it, and it's a minor thing, but it's an annoying little nitpick, is, you know, in something like Hades, you'll complete a room and there'll be a couple of doors that choose what kind of upgrade you get next, and they just have a very clear picture of the thing you will pick up in the next room. This doesn't do that. You have your branching path, you pick your doors, the doors will sort of clue you in on what upgrade's going to be behind them, but each of these doors has like an abstract rune that doesn't at a glance tell you what the upgrade behind it is, which meant I did a lot of pause, click L3, check the glossary, scroll down, find the image, oh, that's what that door means. And that was a pretty regular occurrence that was not a huge issue, but it just kind of slowed me down, and it's the kind of thing where I wanted to be able to stand pretty close to a door but not click on it and just have it give me a pop-up that's like, that rune means this. That little bit of extra quality of life was like my biggest issue with it, but I like that there is a good amount of new gameplay tools available in this roguelike mode that weren't in the base game. I like that there is new environments and enemy types that were not in the basic game, and I like that there is a lot of lovingly remade content from other God of Wars that kind of filters in a little bit. I've put maybe 8 hours into seeing it through the first time and seeing like the main thrust of the narrative done, but they have a good justification for keeping it going after that and for making that make sense narratively. It's a good little story addendum for Kratos and a good fun roguelike mode. The runs are not too lengthy. I was spending maybe 20 to 30 minutes in a run and it's pretty quick to get back in. There's a good variety of ways you can permanently upgrade your character between runs, between things like basic stat upgrades or more big picture changes to the way your character works that are quite nice. Yeah, if you're someone who's finished Ragnarok, this is like a substantial chunk of free content that doesn't feel bolted on. It doesn't feel superfluous. It doesn't feel like they were just looking for an excuse to stick another mode in. It feels made with the same kind of purpose as the rest of the game. It's really good. I've been having a good time with it. I want to go back into it even though I've finished the narrative of it. It is a lot of fun.
I'm glad to hear it. I had heard about it, I hadn't got round to it, like looking into it, but I really fucking liked Ragnarok.
Yeah, if you want just an excuse to be playing more Ragnarok with like a good amount of narrative, that a lot of the narrative is happening like while you are picking upgrades, and like you can go into shop menus and things and the narrative keeps happening and like doesn't make that pause while you pick your options. Like it doesn't slow you down to do the narrative, but there is like 8 hours of additional narrative just happening while you have cool fights. And that's pretty good.